JD Vance put on a masterclass in how to handle biased moderators and a lying opponent. And it was a thing of beauty. It was beautiful. It was like every Republican or Republican voter or person who, in this case, is rooting for Trump knows exactly what I am feeling right now, which is just, thank God. It just listening to a guy go out there and know how to raise the right points in response to the right questions, to not take the moderator's bullshit. It was really cleansing. It was just, you never see it. It's just so great to see. The moderators are gross. Margaret Brennan, not only do you desperately need some bronzer, you need to understand how to moderate a fair debate when you have half the country who's rooting for the other guy. She didn't even attempt to be fair. I mean, I'm going to utter words I never thought I would utter. I preferred Norah O'Donnell. Oh my God. This Margaret Brennan, she used to have a reputation as being kind of like reasonable. Like she flirted with the Catholic right, the Christian right. And when you get on issues of faith, she could be kind of like normal. No. She's been in the soup too long. She's gone totally native over there at CBS News. You are terrible, madam. Terrible. The moderators were disgusting, but JD Vance was a vision. And Tim Walz really did indeed look like the bumbling knucklehead he said he was. Oh, there's so much to go over. We have a full lineup of guests for you tonight. We've got in-depth analysis on what we just witnessed and what it will mean with just a little over a month before Election Day. We're also monitoring the media reaction, which we'll bring to you. It's always fun to highlight. But first, well, you heard my initial thoughts. Let me get to my guests. Rich Lowry is here. He's editor-in-chief of National Review. And Eliana Johnson is here as well, editor of the Washington Free Beacon and co-host of the Ink-Stained Wretches podcast. Rich, do you feel me? Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Totally. I don't know how he possibly could have improved on that performance. Substantively, tonally, just everything. In terms of the message he was driving home, he brought it back to the economy and the American dream and how we need to revive it. He constantly made the point that Kamala Harris is in power now, and why hasn't she done all these wonderful things that she's promising. The only thing that was difficult for him, I think, was the January 6th thing right at the end. That's not his fault.
Yep,
right. Donald Trump has created that vulnerability, but he deflected really deftly there as well by getting it onto the censorship. So I'm not sure when I've seen a better debate. Maybe, I don't know. I have no use for him, obviously, because my politics are opposite, but maybe Barack Obama at his height in 2008. But this was just an extraordinary performance, a stellar performance. I'm not surprised that he was great because we've kind of seen it out on the campaign trail and in various interviews with hostile interviewers. But I was a little surprised at how pathetic Tim Walz was. Came out of the gate nervous, hemming and hawing. And then just the way he looked when he wasn't speaking on camera, he looked nervous, he looked sad, he looked befuddled. He kind of looked like the kid in the back of the classroom that can't keep up with the lecture and is desperately trying to take notes. It was just a terrible look.
Look at the picture.
Great night for JD.
Eliana cannot relate to that kid. She was the front kid in the front of the class every time. This is the classic. This JD Vance look will go down. This will be on people's Christmas stockings. Here's one thing I wanted to add. You know what was so masterful about what JD did tonight? He's been demonized by this press since he was named as the running mate. And he completely shattered that tonight. He was kind. He was likable. He complimented his beautiful wife. He brought up his kids. He kept giving Tim Walz points. Like, I kind of agree with that. He said the thing about how if I don't win and he becomes the vice president, I will help him. He did such an effective job throughout the whole 90 minutes of showing America, I'm actually a nice guy. And those women, those female Republican voters who left the party, who are now going to vote for Kamala Harris, will, if he was the problem, the childless cat ladies, which did not come up, I have to imagine they're looking at him just a little softer tonight, Eliana. But your thoughts on what we saw tonight?
I thought it was an extremely impressive performance on Vance's part. And I have to imagine that Rich and many other conservatives like me were thinking the same thing, which is watching JD Vance. It was clear that he prepared a lot, not only in terms of the substance of his responses, but also in terms of the style. He knows how to be combative, but he wasn't that combative tonight. He came across as very, very likable. And I kept thinking, this is the job everybody wishes Trump had done. Because in terms of the discipline of his responses, he brought every response back to, well, you know who's been in office for the past 3.5 years? Kamala Harris. It started with the first response to the question that was on Israel and Iran, and talking about a world in flames and the chaos that has engulfed the world over the past 3 years. And he brought that back to the doorstep of Kamala Harris. But for as good as Vance was, Walz was extremely weak. And people were talking about, the Harris campaign was deliberately lowering the bar for Walz. CNN ran a story saying, Tim Walz is really, really nervous. And there were questions about whether this is a strategy so that he can go out there and overperform. Well, they didn't actually lower the bar enough because he was extremely bad. And, Vance, people are commenting on Twitter that he's really benefited from doing so many media interviews and from having so many combative exchanges with the press. Well, he was better than than any interview he's done since walking on that stage in Milwaukee. And for Walz, there are a lot of people out there saying he should have done more interviews. Maybe, but on the other hand, watching him tonight, you start to understand why the campaign doesn't actually want him out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. When he's in front of a friendly interviewer, like when he used to go on MSNBC before he got chosen, sure, that could be a friendly, fun exchange in which you do well. This is a totally different ballgame. And it is interesting now that CNN article yesterday setting the expectations low now seems like a clarion call. Like,
that's the one thing they've told the truth about the whole campaign.
Oh, also, Walz's biggest lie the whole night came at the end when he said, "I've really enjoyed this debate, JD."
I will say,
so I think all three of us felt, I'm guessing, that the one moment where he went after the moderator for his time. He was fact-checked by the non-fact checkers who were fact checkers, but only, again, of JD Vance. They let Tim Walz get away with lie after lie. And Jesus came down and told him this is what Republican voters want to see. He wasn't having it. He insisted on having his time. Forgive me, but those bitches tried to cut his mic, and it was unbelievable. Here's the exchange in SOT 1.
Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret.
I am dripping contempt, dripping contempt out of my pores for CBS News in that month. That was such a dereliction on so many levels. Hello, you morons. A debate is unfolding. Alert, note to anchor and CBS producers. The debate is happening right here. You let it fire up. Let them go. Eliana, we talked about this a million times before we prepared for our debate back in December. When you have fire on the stage, let it play out. This is a real issue. This is a huge issue, and it's voters' number one or number two issue in virtually every poll. You didn't have a lot more to get to. There was a lot of inanity in that debate, including your next question, which was about climate change. And good for JD Vance for fighting on it.
Oh, you know, when Trump was fact-checked multiple times and Harris was not fact-checked at all, I think it was on your show, Megyn, when I said he should have been prepared to be unjustly fact-checked. And that's exactly what JD was prepared for tonight. And he did a wonderful job with that. I think any Republican candidate should be prepared when they walk on a stage on a mainstream media network to be treated unfairly and to hit back exactly as Vance did, because viewers like it. And I think both independent and persuadable voters like to see it, as well as the base.
And Rich, for Tim Walz to try to say that the CB1 app has been in place since 1990, this is nothing new that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did, is such a lie. That's what Vance was about to say. Like, this has been one of the most controversial things you've done while in office. She's done while in office. And they cut his mic and moved on to climate change. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.